Hello, reader. Thank you for joining. This is the Christian Readers Community Podcast. On this podcast, we will be discussing with fellow readers and authors. You will never lack for good conversations and recommendations of Christian books. If you're a lover of literary works, fiction and non-fiction, then you have made the right stop here. Thank you for joining us again.
Barry Kukovich is a native of Western Pennsylvania. His prior work includes poetry published in the Hartford Courant, Chicago's community magazine, and in his self-published book, Manortown. In 2015, Kukovich's speculative fiction novel, The Church of Wolves, was published by Neverland Publishing. His latest work is The Return of the Magi.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Christian Readers Community. This is Faith Jiga. And wow, I read this book and I was like, oh, what a perfect book for Christmas. And well, fortunately, I have the author here with me so I can ask him questions about this beautiful book I read, The Return of the Magi. Welcome to the show, Barry Kukovich.
Well, thank you, Faith.
I wished we had this interview earlier because it was just, this is just the perfect book for Christmas, and I hope people will be able to, get it at the time we publish it for those who are looking for Christmas books to read. And well, let me see what a pleasure it is to have you here again. So welcome to the show, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you wrote this beautiful book. It's titled The Return of the Magi. Mm-hmm. I was actually telling someone while I was reading your book that, okay, so this person fictionalized the story of the three wise men. And the person was like, what? Are you serious? It's not everyone that would think of fictionalizing these men. Even though what they did was great. You even stated such in your preface before the story started, that the Bible just, made just 16, or was it 15 words about these men. Their impact in the birth of Jesus Christ is so profound. Tell us about the book, The Return of the Magi.
Well, yeah, I was reading Matthew, rereading it, after several years. And I came, of course, to the second chapter, and I was amazed at just within a few lines, the entire story of the Magi is told. I mean, you could blink and almost miss it. And I started to think, that story was so big and still is, but it was so large in my childhood, and there have been so many movies about the Magi, and like every Christmas ornament in so many homes, you have the Magi on church lawns, and it's such a large part of the story, and yet so very little is told about it. And then I said, I remember a poem written by T.S. Eliot called The Journey of the Magi. So I looked it up. I remember reading it when I was in junior high school. I'm 72 years old right now, and I wrote this book a year or two ago. And
wow.
But I remembered reading this poem when I was in junior high school, and I pulled it for this interview, and just the first few lines: "Journey of the Magi, a cold coming we had of it, just the worst time of the year for a journey, and such a long journey. The ways deep and the weather sharp, the very dead of winter, and the camels galled, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow." I said, "Oh my!" It was so earthy, and it was so tangible. It was real. It just wasn't, tucked away in a type of decoration, or a song. And I said, I have to really think about this. So I started to research different legends of the Magi, because nobody truly knows who they were. And
yes,
yeah, and were they kings? Were they priests? Who were they? How was it translated into Matthew? And one of the big theories was that they were high priests of Zoroastrianism, which was the main religion of the Parthian Empire at that time. The Persian Empire before it, and then the Parthian religion. I knew a little bit about Zoroastrianism. That led me to research it more, and what a foundational pillar it was for Christianity. During the Babylonian captivity, the Jews who were in the Parthian courts learned from their scholars and took some of the beliefs of Zoroastrianism into their scriptures, which then, of course, followed into Christian scriptures years later. So I thought, okay, this is amazing, and this is part of the story that should be told. And I was propelled to write the book from that point on, basically.
Wow. Okay, so we have Gaspar, your main character, which let me give away the spoiler, who is one of the Magi, and you have Isaac, you have Marcus, and you have Benjamin. These are all beautifully, or should I say, richly developed characters.
Thank you.
Tell us, how did you approach creating such diverse personalities and intertwining their journey? Like, one didn't overlap the other. They are so beautifully or richly developed, rather. Go ahead, tell us.
Thank you. Isaac, was the young boy, and I was using this as a vehicle to ask questions to myself about faith, about religion, and that was really my child. He represents my child self, innocence, curious, So that's really me that I have wrapped up in there. Gaspar was probably maybe he's the person I want to be.
Oh.
I don't think I'll ever achieve that, but I think he's the person I want to be, and perhaps he's an amalgam of some of the best teachers I ever had altogether.
Oh, wow.
Benjamin was really, I had two best friends growing up. We met, we were 6 years old. And Benjamin was really based on my one friend who was a person who was, he's passed away several years ago, but both of them have passed away actually. But he was very duty driven in his profession of his life, and yet he was very devoted to his family, and he was torn between those duties. And as you know in the book, and thank you for reading it and taking so much time with it, he was really, Benjamin was really torn between his duties to Gaspar and his duties to his mother. And then Melchior, Melchior, of course, one of the other wise men who's in it, was based on my other best friend, who is irascible and cantankerous and mischievous. So that was his personality.
Yes. Yeah, really, I love his personality, and oh my, after seeing what those people did, what Gaspar and his friend did, and I was like, oh no, so this was the reason why.
Thanks. We can't give too much of that away, I guess, but the caravan stop and the fight from the assassins in the caravan stop and what they were planning. I love doing that. I really love doing that.
Wow. Before let me ask you this question. You've said so much about this historical novel you wrote, and I would like to ask you, how did you balance historical accuracy? Like, the book was so captivating, and creative storytelling. So tell us, how did you balance historical accuracy and creative storytelling?
I researched really quite a bit. I knew, of course, you'd be asking me that. I was thinking, how many books did I really read for this? Now some things I knew, just from my reading of religion and history over the years. But the detail, I had to really jump into the detail. And like I used one book quite a bit. I probably read about 20 books to research this. And easily as many internet articles. But I used W.H.C. Friend's The Rise of Christianity as a major source. I used Gnostic philosophy that Tobias Charlton wrote years ago. But there are even things that of course, everybody knows about the Roman army, but how in detail do we know it? And there's one book that I perused, The Roman Army from Caesar to Trajan. It has a lot of photographs in it and artist reconstructions. And I remember on one of the pages, the detail was, it was a photograph of a Roman military boot. And at one point I was thinking, I think I can use that. It almost looks like a sandal that curls up the ankle. It's hobnailed in its sole. And I was thinking, well, could I use that as a plot point for a sandal breaking? Because you look at this and you see just how the sandal would snap, through the straps. And would that be a soldier kind of delayed and hanging back from the rest of his troop? And because of that, he sees an ambush, So those are the things I juggled in my mind. As it turned out, I didn't have to use that. As you know, there is an ambush with the centurion Marcus, and it took a whole other different route. With the I described the Parthian ambush and the way the Parthian bowmen would shoot from horses and that type of a thing. So that was another level of detail. So it was all of that. Is putting together the detail. As far as the real fictional parts in the book, like probably one of the biggest fictional parts in the book was the three gifts. I posit that gold, frankincense, and myrrh, of course, was given to the child. But that each of the wise men got a gift in return, and I totally made up because it occurred to me whenever we give a gift to God, don't we get something greater back?
Yes.
Yeah. And when that thought hit me as I was putting this together, I said, well, what could be given to them from the Christ child? And that became kind of a mystery of the book, and it certainly tied into with you had mentioned the attack, the assassins at the caravan. That was Melchior's that saved them there, and of course the ending of the book is where two of the wise men understand the gift. They've seen the gift. Gaspar does not, and Gaspar does not fully realize the gift to the very end of the book. And to me, that's the crescendo of the book. That's the height of the novel, right at the end. So.
Yeah, it really was. It's a beautiful story. Now your story explores things like faith, doubt, and the search for meaning. Yes. How does this reflect your own understanding of spirituality and human and even the human wasteland? Let's talk about that.
It certainly does, and I'd already mentioned a little bit about the curious child of Asak answering those questions, and I wanted to drop back inside myself and say, okay, Christianity, let's go back to ground zero. And when this story, I placed this story a year or so after the crucifixion. Okay, so when I look at that, I think, well, okay, there was no Bible at that time. There were no writings that would go into the Bible at that time. That would come later. There was no Christianity yet. All the people who involved in this great story, were Jews. They were not being called Christians yet. That would come later. So it's right back to ground zero, and people are trying to figure out what's going on, which is why Gaspar returns. Why Gaspar returns to Jerusalem. He's trying to figure out what's going on, and I think I'm trying to figure out what went on, and I think we all are to a certain degree. And I use I use a story in the book that really describes it. And I think if you're looking for accuracy in any of the story, and the story I use is Gaspar tells it, but it's really a story I took from Rumi, the great Persian poet, Middle Ages Persian poet. And he describes where he goes out into the night, stares up into the heavens, and he says, "My head tells me I am nothing." This vastness of space. My head tells me I am nothing. My heart tells me I am everything. Between the two, somewhere the truth streams. And that would be my philosophy. And of course, Gaspar uses that in the book. And I actually put it into the book. I seed it into the book twice, and then at the ending, it's there again. So.
Yeah. Now let's move a little to the religious aspect of your book. Your book explores, or you incorporated Zoroastrianism, like you earlier mentioned, early Christianity, and Judaism as well in your book. What message did you, aim to give by incorporating or intertwining these religions?
Well, if God is universal, God speaks to everyone in various ways,
Mm.
And whether that's a foreshadowing of what happened, leading up to Christianity, or whether it's happening today, I think the message of God is simply infinite. It's everywhere. And I do use if you think about that period, which I just said was like ground zero. This is before Christianity really began with St. Paul and with so many others, just spreading. All these religions were washing over and through each other like tides, and I use Hinduism in the book, talking about. I had to reread the Bhagavad Gita, and pull out the example of Prince Arjuna in the Battle of Kurukshetra, and where he sees God as his charioteer, and other times he only sees the charioteer, because we can only see so much of God. If anything, we get glimpses of God. So I use that as an example, and I use that as an example in the Christian message whenever after the crucifixion, where Christ is appearing, on the road, Christ is appearing behind locked doors, popping up here and popping up there. Well, how can that be? How can that be possible? And Asak is the one who really poses the question to that in the book. How can this be? And of course, Marcus. Marcus is the doubter, the Roman centurion about everything. Mm. He's the critic of everything. And to him, it's insanity. But it's difficult for us with finite minds to see infinity. It's nearly impossible. And we only can get glimpses, beautiful glimpses from time to time. So if that's the case, then we would see these things occurring and say, yeah, because we can only hold so much in our minds. We can only hold so much in these small skulls we have, with these small brains we have. We can only take in so much. It's overwhelming. It's simply overwhelming. And Asak talks about, and when he's talking with some of the characters, and I believe it's Marcus, who says, can you stare at the sun? How long can you stare at the sun before the eyes are burned from your head? Well, the glory of God is 1,000 times greater than that. So it's, so we see through filters, we see through glimpses, we see through shadows. There's light and darkness, and I talk about light and darkness through this book, quite a bit. It's a metaphor, but people think of shadows as evil, but
yes.
When you think of a shadow, if you explore a shadow is only one more product of light. A shadow can't exist without light. So even that is light.
Wow.
So even when you're surrounded by the darkest shadows, it's light. Count your blessings. It's almost like somebody told me once, love your enemies, right? Christian message.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because our enemies made us who we are.
Wow. Oh, wow. I really love that line you use. Our enemies made us who we are. Wow. Wow. Well, I wish I could ask more questions on this, but we don't have much time anymore. So I'm just going to move on to the next one. And I would like to ask you, which line or scene resonates deeply with you with this novel?
To me, it's really, I go out into the night, stare up into the heavens. My head tells me I'm nothing. My heart tells me I'm everything. In between the two, somewhere the truth streams.
Wow. Okay, so now we've talked a lot. We've explored several aspects of this book. At the end, what do you expect readers to take away from this book?
I hope it's that lesson, and I hope it's people who would just strip away any type of biases they might have and go back to the Christian message and explore it, and explore it with questioning, and try to see it anew.
Yeah. Wow. So before we go, what should your readers expect from you? Are you going to write about the other Magi, or are you going to write something in the time of the Roman era, or are you going to write something more contemporary?
I'm thinking of writing something more contemporary, but the thing that's nagging at me is that there are three wise men, and that sets up a trilogy. And I've been thinking about the second book being the main protagonist being Balthazar, and then the third book being Melchior, if I would take it into a trilogy. Yeah, and if enough people would want me to do that, I would put my heart to that.
Okay. Well, personally, I hope you do.
Yeah. This has been lovely. Thank you so much, Faith. Really.
Thank you. So tell us, say if someone wants to reach out or check for your books, where would they be able to do that? If they want to visit your website, what's your domain name, social media, and all? And is it possible to also subscribe to your newsletter?
I don't have a newsletter or a website, but the book can be found on Amazon.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyone who goes on Amazon and who goes on Amazon rather and check for The Return of the Magi by Barry.
Yes.
Barry. Yeah, pronounce the surname again.
Kukovich.
Yeah, Kukovich. Yeah, Kukovich. Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, very Kukovich. Sorry. They'll be able to find the book. It's a beautiful book for Christmas. Not just beautiful, it's a perfect book for Christmas. But it can also be read any other time. Any other time of the year. But this is one of the perfect books for Christmas.
Thank you,
and I do hope that anyone listening to us right now will pick up this book. Get a copy of this book and enjoy themselves. It's a beautiful story, a beautiful narrative that balances historical accuracy and creative storytelling. Thank you so much, Barry, for joining me. And I hope to have you back. And I hope that when I invite you next time, you'll be willing to come again.
Hey, thank you. This was lovely. Thank you.
When are we expecting the next book from you?
When? Oh,
yeah.
When's a tough one to say. It usually takes me about a year to write a book. So maybe a year from now.
Okay. No problem. Thank you so much. And like I said earlier, I'll definitely love to get the next book when you release another one, especially a history. I love historical fictions. Thank you so much for joining me once again. And listeners, thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And if you did, please check out this book because you're going to enjoy it even more. Wherever you're listening to us from, please follow us, rate our show on Spotify, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or wherever you're listening from, Amazon. Anywhere, just click on the follow button so that you'll be updated whenever new episode are uploaded. Thank you so much once again, everyone, for joining me. And until I come your way again next time, I'm saying stay safe, stay blessed, and bye-bye, everyone.